Well, Chrystia Freeland's pending exit from Parliament will mean a by-election in 2026, and the Prime Minister suggested rather strongly today that Freeland isn't the only Liberal MP with plans to resign their seat.
We'll have a by-election. There'll be a few by-elections coming up, and we'll run great candidates, and the people in those ridings will decide who they want to send to Parliament.
Lots of plurals there. Well, we know Chrystia Freeland will step down later this month, and we've been reporting for months that former Cabinet Minister Bill Blair is set to be the next High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, while Jonathan Wilkinson is expected to get a diplomatic post in Europe. So that could mean 3 by-elections and a drop of 3 in the Liberal seat count in a minority parliament. So we're going to start there with the Power Panel. Emily Nicola is a columnist for Le Devoir. Gary Keller is a former Chief of Staff to Conservative Cabinet Ministers. Cheryl Oates was the Director of Communications for former Alberta NDP Premier Rachel Notley. And here with me in the studio, Michelle Cadario was Deputy Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Paul Martin. Michelle, you have some experience in minority parliaments. 3 vacancies, 2 appointments, 1 a resignation. That doesn't make your life any easier. But the Prime Minister made it very clear. It seems like that's where this is headed.
Well, let's also, he spoke in the plural, and let's not forget Genero from Edmonton, where we expect that, he resigned quite some time ago. And
he hasn't quit yet. He said he would.
He hasn't quit. He has a pending resignation.
Yes.
So, that one is another one. So that would be plural, no matter what. But, around town, certainly there's chatter. But also, they have a budget bill that still hasn't made its way completely through the House. And so I would think that would be a bit of a timing consideration for whatever they do. Equally around town, there's still lots of talk about others who might want to join the Liberal caucus. So it will be interesting math as they kind of go forward. But I think the job number 1 for them has got to be getting this budget bill going through. And I can't imagine risking, unless they are so sure about some other crossings, that they would risk that by triggering by-elections beforehand. Okay,
that is a good point. And Gary, I hadn't considered that maybe the plural was Matt Genereux, because we've not seen or heard or anything for the MP for Edmonton Riverbend, I believe it is, since that day that he quit. What do you make of this dynamic? Even the loss of Freeland, though, it does reduce the seat count by 1 at a time when, as you know, someone who worked in the House Leader's office, you don't really want to be getting rid of seats at this point.
No, that's right. And I thought the statement by the Prime Minister was interesting. It did set tongues wagging a bit in Ottawa. Ooh, by-elections. Well, how many by-elections? Although, if you take a step back, and if you were to say by-elections plural, Chrystia Freeland, University of Rosedale, a pretty safe Liberal seat, and Matt Genereux, if you did it at the same time, a pretty safe Conservative seat, you're kind of going 1 for 1. So you're not really messing with the math too much. But it is an interesting turn of events. These rumors have been going around for so long in Ottawa about who might be going when, people waiting for October 19th of last year to kick in so they could get their 6-year parliamentary pension. Now we've passed that. But Michelle is right. The main item of business is to get the Budget Implementation Act passed. And currently, it looks like they would get that done in some way, shape, or form, or would be close to doing it. They still got to get it into the House. They still got to get it into committee. You don't want to be messing around too much until you get that bill at least very close to passage, if not all the way through.
But, Cheryl, the parliamentary issues aside, you do need diplomats in countries like the United Kingdom and in places like the European Union, especially with all the things that are happening, right? So how do you begin to approach this as a minority government facing all of these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because what should be like the next step in Chrystia Freeland's story, which should be, an honorable and important position that she's just taken, is totally overshadowed by the fact that she has not resigned her seat. And that tells, us political watchers that there is a real political calculus going on. And I think in addition to what Michelle and others have said about, of course, you need to make sure in this minority situation that you have the votes in the House that you need to pass important pieces of legislation or pass confidence votes. In addition to that, just logistically, a by-election standpoint, if I was working on by-elections, I would want them to all happen at the same time.
Yes.
And so, you want one person to be able to run whatever it is field for all the by-elections at one time. And once you have by-elections happening on different timelines, that becomes really complicated and you need a whole lot more people to do it. So that could be another political calculus here. But yeah, I mean, we need people in these important posts overseas now, perhaps more than we have in a very long time. And now the government's job is to try to balance that with its own political calculus internally, which obviously a very difficult thing to do.
But you know, Emily, the controversy around Freeland, I mean, there's the political self-interest of a government. Then there's the fact that she is a Canadian member of Parliament. It's an unpaid role, but it's a formal role with a foreign government. And you know, obviously her ties to Ukraine, support for Ukraine, it's in alignment with Canadian foreign policy, but she is a Canadian parliamentarian going out the door to work for a foreign government, but still there in the House of Commons. I mean, how do you view that one?
It's certainly an uncomfortable ethical position. It is ripe with conflict of interest and really very much to be avoided at all costs. And so we need to have a clearer sense of a timeline for her. I think more specifically, she could be resigning as an MP, and there's still a window of time for a by-election to be declared afterwards. And so the Prime Minister does have some wiggle room because of that still. So he needs to really be using it. To our pool of names, I will also just mention that another person who might be thinking about where else could I be useful, given the current geopolitics, is Stephen Guilbeault. And so he probably took the time to just think about it over the holidays, and we'll see. He needed probably to just figure it out for himself before making any sort of announcement. So he might stay for a little while, or he might go. But that's also someone else to be thinking about.
Gary, you were nodding aggressively as Emily was speaking about the conflict issues for Freeland. We're told she's been cleared by the Ethics Commissioner for what that is worth. The Ethics Office is often very opaque on some of these things, and it's hard to get that from them directly. And I'm told that the resignation will happen before the end of this month. So does that alleviate it in any way? Because I know Michael Barrett and a lot of Conservatives are out today saying she's got to go right now. You can't be a part-time MP if you're going to do this.
No, it doesn't alleviate the situation. She's still receiving, Canadian taxpayers are paying her salary, $209,000 a year, while she is technically being employed by a foreign government. If that doesn't scream a blatant conflict of interest, I don't know what does. Now, I am one of Canada's biggest supporters in Ukraine. I've been banned by Russia, but when you have a situation like this, it actually harms the cause for Ukraine because it gives rise to people to make all sorts of accusations about what role she's having. And so she needs to resign immediately. And the pseudo resignation, she resigned her parliamentary secretaryship because that falls under the Conflict of Interest Act. And she would be even the further blatant conflict of interest. And the only reason she had that job in the first place was to give her a salary bump up and to allow her to do some travel on the government dime in that role, which she couldn't do as a member of parliament. But she is a blatant situation of a conflict of interest. And the longer she sticks around, the longer it's going to continue to fester. And even worse, it makes it look, and I think the reality is that the Liberal government is acting in its own self-interest to protect itself rather than do the right thing and avoid a conflict of interest. And as Cheryl pointed out, yeah, there are a lot of vacancies, but there are strong public servants who could fill those positions, not waiting for some attenuated Liberal MPs to quit to fill those positions. So I think that is something for people to remember as well.
Well, first of all, Chrystia Freeland is not doing this or did not take a parliamentary secretary position just to bump her salary. Like, come on. She is not, that's not in any way what she was doing.
Couldn't travel. She couldn't do this job.
Well, you can travel as an MP. There's absolutely no issue with her traveling as an MP. She is still a member of the Privy Council because she is a former, she still has a title of honourable. And she has her own stature. So, like, there's no issue with that. And MPs certainly travel around the world, and they represent Canada when they're doing so. So I don't quite understand that argument whatsoever. And I also think that this is somewhat overblown. I think it is a gaffe, and I think that it is a mistake because it doesn't pass the smell test. I don't in any way believe that she would participate in a conflict or do anything that is unethical in any way at all. But they should have thought about this, and she should have thought it through about what it would look like. And so I agree with folks who think it's a political misjudgment, it sounds like it's going to be rectified very quickly. But I also think that she's there because she actually feels like she can make a huge political policy and public policy contribution to a very difficult situation in a country that is going to be facing unbelievable odds in terms of rebuilding and restructuring, and Canada has a role to play, and it's actually good for Canada, good for Canadian companies to be able to have an ally there as well, who can actually speak to some of the ways that Canada can help.
Yeah,
I just like to think of what people would say if a Conservative MP took a job with a foreign government at taxpayers' expense.
Yeah, well, and just on this, the pay bump for a parliamentary secretary is $20,000, but that was the position she took after resigning from cabinet, when the pay bump you get as a minister is $99,900. So it's a net loss of almost $80,000 to move to the parliamentary secretary position, but there is pay associated with it. So Cheryl, I'll give you the last word on this, and I want to just move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's been cleared by the conflict of interest commissioner. It doesn't really matter what the law says. I think it is just such a salient talking point to say you cannot both be an MP and be employed by a foreign government at the same time. I think for anyone who's following this, most people nod to that and say, yeah, that does seem like a conflict of interest, even if she's been cleared. Clearly, the government is okay with this political risk. And, with everything going on right now, even just in this block on the show today, we're going to talk about huge issues that are all happening simultaneously. This probably doesn't have a legacy in terms of reputational damage for the government. And so I can sort of understand why they're willing to take the political hit while they sort the rest out.
Yeah, I think it'd be fascinating if someone took a role advising Viktor Orban's government or the U.S. government right now as a sitting member of parliament. That reaction would be quite something. Look, we're talking about resignations with Freeland, so I just want to show this because it's January 6th. 1 year ago today, there was a big resignation that changed the course of Canadian politics.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Emily, it's been quite a year. 5 years ago on this day, there was a far less peaceful issue about transition of power in the neighbor to the south. But the past 12 months, when you look at where things are now compared to a year ago today, just what are your quick thoughts on it?
It's interesting. I just reposted on social media a column I wrote last year to, basically to this day, I could have written in today because both the years began on issues of basic annexation of Canada, yes or no, our sovereignty. It wasn't just about Justin Trudeau's resignation. It was a context around Justin Trudeau's resignation. The infamous dinner in Mar-a-Lago, trying to figure out whether Donald Trump was joking. And this is how we started the year. And now we are talking about, Venezuela, Cuba, Greenland, Colombia securing its border, Canada trying to figure out as well what's next for both its political sovereignty and also its economy, whether NATO is still whole. So I think that we're circling back to the themes that definitely impacted the beginning of last year, but with even more strength and certainty. I think 2025 was a kind of an awakening for a lot of Canadians who were not used to discuss issues of American imperialism. I think now we are faster to understand the consequences of what the White House is doing. I think we got out of the denial, at least part of it, and hopefully people will be faster on their feet in terms of actually responding to the threats that are being made right now.